Hello, everybody.
It's been a great pleasure to once more invite Jill Rendell to tell us all about a strategic approach to embedding employability. Jill, what can I say other than welcome back, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve, and hello, everybody. I look forward to talking to you for the next hour about how we have and are trying to embed employability in the curriculum here at Hartpury. And what I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about the background to this project, and then I'm going to actually show you the tool that we've developed to map employability within our curriculum, and invite you, if I may, to to ask you for any feedback on what we're doing here, and also to talk to you about some of the challenges that we've had in doing this, and being able to ask for your thoughts on those challenges and how we might actually take that forward. So this has been really a labour of love for me and my team over the last couple of years, where it was really felt that just having a sort of tag-on approach to employability was not going to be the best approach or really cut it. And this was supported very much by all the work that has been done, the excellent work that's been done in the sector, the research on embedding employability. It was also inspired for me by the HE toolkit, the guidance on embedding employability in the curriculum, that I know there's been a great deal of contribution to from the experts in the sector. And also another project that I was very fortunate to be involved in at the end, which was the work done by Peter Chatterton and the JISC team on embedding, well, technology for employability was the title of it. But what I particularly liked about that work was the diagram that they produced, which was the employable student, which had the level of detail that I was able to pick up and use in this mapping exercise. And what I wanted to do by this work was to try and find out what was already going on in the curriculum, and how much of this stuff was being delivered to our students in the curriculum already. And in my naivety, I thought, well, that sounds like a good plan. That should be easy and straightforward. But of course, as you find out, embarking on these things was actually quite a mammoth task, and again presented a fair few challenges institutionally. And so, how did I go about it? I'll just bring this up because this is this, for those of you that don't know, is the JISC tool, and we will come back to this a little later, because this was the diagram produced by the JISC project on the employable student, which for each of these sort of basic attributes actually had quite a lot of detail that helped to support the questionnaire that we asked of all of the module leaders to find out what was actually going on in the curriculum. So I will return to that, but I thought for those of you that haven't seen it, I'd just bring this up so you know what I'm talking about. So how did I go about this project? First of all, one of the key things that I saw on the HEA framework and for embedding employability in the curriculum was to try and gain from the institution a shared understanding of employability factors. And again, this sounds like that ought to be a simple thing. But again, as I've learned over the last few years, actually getting that shared and gaining that shared understanding has been less straightforward than I expected, because many of the academic colleagues that I work with have different understandings of what employability is, and you know, some feeling was that it's tagging a CV session onto a module. And so for me, getting this shared understanding of what are we actually talking about here was very important. And that the JISC diagram really helped to do that, because of the level of detail in each of the areas. It gave examples of what we were talking about. So the first thing I did with the academic staff was to hold staff development workshops around that idea of what is employability, so that there was this shared understanding. And within our sort of employability strategy, we came up you know, with our shared understanding of employability, and we had a sort of description of it. And from that, we developed a Google Docs questionnaire, which I will show you in a moment, along with some instructions and guidance for all module leaders to be able to fill in and rate their module against these factors. We did several iterations of the questionnaire. We tested it, and then we came back to it again later, where we changed some of the things according to people's understanding of it. But this wasn't straightforward. We have, you know, several module leaders, and we have quite a few modules. So it took us quite a while to get this off the ground and to get it all complete. Once we got it going, it actually took about 2 months to gather all of this data. We did this with our team in the careers area, where we did phone and face-to-face completion with the module leaders, so that we tried to get some idea of people completing this with the same understanding, and trying to ensure that we did, whilst also having their on-the-ground knowledge of their own curricula and their module. Now, I think this gave ownership of it, but obviously from a parity point of view, you have got different module leaders with their own interpretation of something completing the questionnaire. It is not being done by the same person. So that has limitations as well as benefits. And later on, when we have some questions, I'll be very interested to hear your views on how that actually may pan out, and your thoughts on that. The other thing we felt was really important to ensure that this is taken seriously, is to have some effectiveness within the organisation, was to strategically embed this idea of employability within the academic structures in the institution. And the way that we went about this was to ensure that the mapping exercise formed part of our teaching and learning strategy. So the mapping exercise is built into our new 5-year teaching and learning strategy, which is actually called T-REX here at Hartpury, and that is now considered and monitored through our whole governance system. It is also written into our curriculum approval and quality framework process. So when new curricula is developed, the mapping process is expected as part of that approval process, and that will be for any new modules, programs, or major changes to assessment within modules. That this mapping has to be completed so that the database that I will show you shortly is kept live and relevant and up to date throughout. We launched the tool to the higher education executive for feedback in early September, and that was very well received by the HA executive. There were some queries from them regarding the absolute measurement of these factors, which I think was to be expected. And there was the other challenge, which also came from the staff a little later on, was around the where there is some form of measurement placed on it and ranking, that there was a sort of competitive instinct of which ones are doing better than others, and how that might actually be used or could be used in a negative way with programs and program teams. And I would say that factor has probably been the most challenging to overcome so far in gaining the buy-in of the teams. And so I will talk to you a little bit more about that as I show you the tool and some of the things that have been raised and how we're trying to overcome them. Launched this to staff in early October 2017, and again, I think it was broadly very well received. There were one or two members of academic teams where their employability appeared to be low within programs, or lower than others in programs, where again this this sort of competitiveness and feeling of, well, what's going to be done with this and what's going to happen to us as a result of this crept in, and that's that's something that we're trying very hard to ensure that the perception of this doesn't go in that direction, because I feel that it's very much not what this is all about. Right, I'm just trying to get myself to the next time. Okay, what I want to do now then is to take you to the questionnaire that we developed to show to start to gather the data. And to give you a feel for how we went about that, and then I'm going to show you the tool itself and the kind of data that we've pulled out of it. So, from that JISC employability student model, we developed a questionnaire that, as I say, we completed in most circumstances, either sat down face-to-face via appointments with module leaders or over the phone. There were very few that felt confident enough to do it themselves with guidance. Most actually did go down the route of actually working with us to complete it. Reasonably lengthy. I'm just trying to find the scroll down on this whilst I have this screen, which I'm not able to find. Let's see if I can move this GoToMeeting to the side. I might be able to do that. Okie dokie. No, arrows aren't working for it either. It was working a moment ago when I tested it. One of 9. Let's try that one. There we go. Okay, so the employability mapping questionnaire went through asking basic information about the module number, the module name, which just was able to keep our database, and then we started to ask about the academic and research skills. Now, we chose to include academic skills into this data because from previous project that we had, we really didn't want to divorce the academic skills from employability skills, and felt as an opportunity to try and gather all of this information that we would do so in one go. So we did look at involving the academic and research skills as part of this project. So what I'm going to do is scroll down and show you the type of information that we asked for. And we rated from 1 to 5 whether the module leader felt that there was a low content or a high content of this within the module. It's fairly crude as a measure, but it was to give us a base feel for what was contained within the curricula. So the first section was around academic skills. And in most circumstances, under each of the sections, we tried to give a little bit of guidance as to what was meant by these things. Went up around these areas so that the staff understood what did we mean by these terms. So just going back here, we start to get onto the sections from the JISC model that shows the various areas that we were looking to map. So basic work readiness and the sort of components of that, professional skills and knowledge. We will send delegates the full copy of this questionnaire. Kath will send this out afterwards with the slides, so you'll be able to see this in much more detail and look at it in much more detail when she sends that round later. But we basically went through on the questionnaire in great detail all of the different component parts of the model and looking to see in the delivery and the assessment strategies of each module what the module leader felt was being covered and in what sort of strength within the modules. And this was done for every module and every program in the whole faculty. Now, probably just to give you some sort of context, because there will be, I imagine, amongst the delegates, some institutions that are very large, and we were fortunate here at Hartpury in that we are not large, and so therefore I am aware the labour of love this was for me to get this off the ground for a small institution with 1,500 higher education students and a fairly specialist institution that we are. A very large university, to do this across a whole curriculum would be incredibly difficult. But for us, challenging though it was, we felt that it was actually something that we could do. So the questionnaire covered all of those factors, and from this questionnaire we built the tool. So what I'm going to do now is to show you the tool, the various sort of screens and data sheets that it was able to produce, and then I can talk to you about some of the challenges that I had with those things as we have launched this to staff. So I'm just going to go back. This is the main switchboard of the employability database that was created from the questionnaire, and the first page is a screen that shows all of the various attributes and how they're weighted within the within the database. So we've looked at each of the factors under each and the maximum possible rating that we could have if everything was rated at a very high, which was a 5. So we looked at the academic skills, we have the basic work readiness, attributes, authentic experience, professional skills, lifelong employability, higher level capabilities, and lifelong learning. So this, to all intents and purposes, is a key to show colleagues how the database is made up and how everything is weighted. So that is the first page of the database. We then have the JISC employable student, again just to remind colleagues of how this is made up, the research that's gone on behind it, and how each of these sort of detailed sections actually do relate to the various elements and the various attributes of the employability of the employable student. I've found this quite a good picture, and one that colleagues have actually found useful themselves and have easy to understand. The next page actually has proved to be the most controversial in terms of working with colleagues, and this actually shows how when all the data was drilled down, how the different programs fared in relation to their strength of employability within the curricula. And whilst we have found that from the development team incredibly useful, on the basis that for us it didn't really show up any major surprises, and it certainly had correlation, and I use that word loosely because it's not tested, but in terms of our feelings about this in relation to the daily outcomes of our programs, it didn't really throw up any sort of major anomalies. So later down the line, it would be one of the things we would like to be able to do as we develop and use this work is to see how that might actually properly correlate with daily outcomes. At the moment, what we're looking at and what our feelings were was anecdotally, it certainly didn't throw up any surprises at all. Now, in that sense, I find this information is actually quite useful as a management tool. It's quite useful, but I think the sort of caveat with it is that it needs to be used with great care on the basis that the academic teams find it quite challenging to see a list from top to bottom, and looking at measuring the sort of potential of what they're doing in their curricula. So what we've decided to do with this information is we have taken this page out for the tool that is actually placed on the program leaders page for them to use, because we're finding it possibly counterproductive in getting the buy-in and the use of the tool and the the positivity that we would like to get from its use. So we're keeping it as something that's useful behind the scenes, but not something that we really want to overtly share at this moment in time. And that will be an interesting one to monitor as we go on. I would very much like your thoughts and feedback on that as well when we get to the questions at the end. I will switch to this one because this is I think quite an interesting page. What we have built here is for every single module we have a set of charts that show how these values, how these attributes actually are included in the module itself. So for every single module of our curricula, we have it by module number, by module name, and we have it filtered also by module leader. So for a module leader that may be running several modules, we can actually look and filter by that module leader. We can filter by module and by module code, and we can actually have a look at the percentage rating by skill group for each of these attributes in at a modular level. Now, when I was talking to the staff about this when launching it, where I find it useful at module level is very much in curriculum planning and assessment planning. And the suggestion that we made to the academic teams was this was where that they, as module leaders, could best use the tool. That they could be looking to see when they're writing assessment, if one of these skill groups were showing to be a little low, then potentially by tweaking an assessment strategy, it could cover the same material, and learning outcomes in many ways for the subject matter remain the same, but by changing the assessment strategy, the employability skills could be enhanced. So we talked about some examples of how that might actually happen, and the idea going forward is that we can share good practice between module leaders who are showing high on a set of skills against ones that are showing a little lower on a set of skills, as to how they're actually putting strategies in place to enhance employability within the curricula. And so this is quite detailed information at module level and can be filtered in the tool for every single module within our curriculum. We have this then by program. So this is exactly the same setup, but when you're looking at the students' outcomes per program, we can see that by the end of a program of study, how this then fares, which at an institutional level as well, it shows us whether we do have, whether all students that are coming to Hartpury, and we are saying to those students that they will have the Hartpury advantage of being here, that employability is extremely important to us. We have some idea that we do have some kind of parity across our programs in terms of what we do in curriculum to help support students. They will be achieved in different ways with the nature of the different programs, but we know that there is going to be some sort of parity across the board, and it helps the curriculum program teams. It helps to look at this on the periodic curriculum reviews. It helps to show in the sort of annual monitoring cycle, because we have written the mapping into the annual monitoring cycle to be reported upon in relation to employability of students as well. It is expected that it will be commented upon within our strategic thinking. So what else have I got? We have, this is the information, the listed information that was a little controversial. That's showing it in diagrammatical form, and again, this can be filtered by program and by subject area too. And so department heads can actually look at their own departments as well as just by program. Is there anything else? This will be interesting to see how much use it is. I'm waiting for a little bit of feedback on this in use, but what we've also tried to look at is depending on the student's pathway through a program, they take their compulsory modules, and then there are a series of optional modules. We were looking to see how the strength may be altered dependent on the choices that a student took. So we've attempted to try and capture that within this data, and I think the usefulness of this one we will have to look at in use. At the moment, I'm not sure how useful this one will actually be to us, but we have put it in at the moment to see how that one actually works. And just see if there's anything else that I haven't. Program, compulsory option modules, essential by program. I think that's everything on the tool. So we have this tool is available to all of our staff. It's not at the moment student facing a tool. It is for our staff. It is available on the portal to all of our module and program leaders, so that they they can refer to it whenever they are looking to develop their curriculum, to develop their assessment. It's very early doors. We haven't we have launched it, we've talked about it, but the next stage really is to think about how this will pan out in use. What feedback did we have from the staff? There were one or two questions from the staff about the reliability of the data, being that it was contributed by all the different module leaders, and that we had only sort of semi-control of that, with sort of informally sitting with those module leaders and completing it. That it was the data that we have pulled out from this is been at one point in time in terms of their perception of their module now, and we didn't repeat it several times in order to get that that sort of close correlation between the results. That I accept is, from a methodological point of view, is not perfect. That said, being able to get the whole of our curriculum team to complete a questionnaire was a mammoth task, and the potential to do that 2 or 3 times, I think we would have been on the nigh impossible if we'd tried to achieve that. And I think the feeling that we had is that this is not here to be an accurate measure, that it is to be a tool, to be an indication, to be a help and a support, rather than an accurate measurement. We also feel that as a live tool, that as the curriculum changes and moves, and the tool becomes used, that these questions will be revisited by the module leaders on a fairly regular basis, and therefore, as it becomes more used, the understanding of what we're looking at, the engagement with it, and the regularity with which it is completed will then become closer together, and the reliability improved. And again, I would very much like your comments on that, because it was, for academic staff who, correct methodology is very important, had some areas of challenge for us. So that would be interesting to hear from you. The other comment and challenge that came from academic teams was around the scalability of the content, employability content, depending on the size of a module. And that one I have several thoughts about. I wonder whether the type of questions asked about the employability factors in a piece of curricula, would that necessarily double should a module be 30 credits as opposed to 15? We haven't at this stage taken into consideration that. What we have done is asked our module leaders to rate strength. So it was raised at the staff consultation and came out as a question to think about, and very much like to have some feedback and thoughts on that as part of this type of tool. Going forward, we are considering and looking at how we may build a similar tool to look at the students facing perception of this information, probably at program level only. We have now some idea of how we are building this into the curricula and the what we are intending to do with our curricula. The students' perception from the other side of the coin as to what they feel they have received as a result of curricula would also be very interesting. Haven't started to do that, but we are considering using a sort of mirrored idea, mirrored factors in student-friendly language to be able to gather that kind of information. What we have done thus far, I'm awaiting the analysis of, is started to build in an induction level survey of our students' perceptions of their readiness as they've come into the institution. So this was done, we've done this in induction, we've utilised similar factors so that we are looking at similar things and looking at things in a similar way. And the idea here is to repeat that at each year of study so that we get some idea of how students are progressing. So those are the thoughts to develop in the future. What we are very, very keen to continue to do is to strengthen the perception amongst staff that the value of this tool is really about building their awareness of these factors rather than it being an accurate measurement. I don't think it is an accurate measurement. I don't think it can be easily an accurate measurement. But by focusing attention, by getting staff to use this as part of our processes, our strategic processes, if we are able to try to align what we're looking for as an institution and get staff to focus on these things as they build curricula, I am hoping, more than hoping, believing that this will help to develop and strengthen employability within our curricula. What we will also hopefully be able to see is where the gaps may be in certain areas and certain programs, how we might actually be able to do something about that in curricula, but also where we can focus some of our extracurricular activity to point students towards other things that they can do as part of their experience here at Hartpury to strengthen the skills that maybe are not covered to the extent we would like them to be covered in curricula, which is again where the sort of ranking helps from a management point of view. What we also hope this will do is to be able to give us a story to tell, for our next TEF submission. It wasn't ready for the last one, but we were well underway. But for the next one, the results and the story around this and what we're able to produce from it should be helpful to assist with that too. So that really brings me to the end of the demonstration of the tool and what we've done thus far. And I would be really happy and pleased to hear feedback from delegates on what you think of this, what sort of strengths it may have, and for you some of the challenges that you feel it has, and answers to one or two of the questions that I've posed as I've gone through. I would really welcome your feedback. It's been
Jill, that's fabulous. Colleagues, have you got any questions? And it's all gone quiet. I'm going to ask one in that case. Oh, Barbara's asked, is the JISC tool freely available to everyone?
Hello.
Oh, we've got you back again.
Yes. Okay. Shall I repeat that answer?
Yes, please.
Yes. And just to say that on the JISC website, the Technology for Employability project report is on there. It's freely available, and the diagram is there. That's free to everybody. But I will send that slide round as part of the tool, which will come from CAF to all the delegates.
Thank you, Jill. Any more questions, comments, queries? 2 or 3 times Jill's asked for feedback, so I'm sure she'd welcome some feedback on what she's had to share with us.
Hello.
Hi, Jill. I think people are thinking about their responses. While they think about their responses, can I ask you a question? And
Absolutely.
that is, have you got at Hartpury an initiative focused on learner analytics? And if so, are the data that you're getting feeding into that overall learner analytics initiative?
We do have again a very really embryonic project around learner analytics. Certainly the student questionnaire that I talked about, it was the project on learner analytics that really kicked that off. And I think what I said is that if we've done this really valuable piece of work, it was important that the learner analytics actually, sort of aligned with that. And so the questions for the students are very much aligned to these factors, and in the same way as we've dealt with them in here. How we pull the whole thing together to be able to get some sort of really flashy measurements out of it is a work in progress, I would say, Steve, but we're certainly thinking that way.
That's helpful, thanks for that. And it's something for us to come back and talk to you about at a later date. A further question I have, and that is, and there's kind of several bits to it, that is, how are you going to track students after they've graduated?
Okay, what for the Leo,
Yeah,
the new
yes,
the New Delhi. Yes, we had
yes.
yes, we had a meeting about that the other day. I say there's an awful lot of balls in the air at the moment with all these with all these new policies and initiatives. But again, one of the comments that came from the academic teams was trying to find a way that does exactly that, where we can actually look at how these initiatives within the curricula and initiatives that we do outside of the curricula actually maps then to those outcomes. And I think it's very important that we are able to put something in place that does that. Because then you start to see the sort of the impact and the effectiveness of the journey as we go along. It's as an overarching project, which is our Heart Readvantage project. It's a very large piece of work. There's several sub-projects that sit within that, and yes, but the connection of them all is vitally important. That we're looking at what the students come in with, all of the things that happen to them while they're here, and then what the outcomes are at the end, and how we can actually track that. Is part of the overarching thing. I have to say I haven't completely pieced it together yet, but definitely we're on the case.
I look forward to that. I'm interested that people talk about Leo as the New Delhi rather than Leo. Interesting. We've got a comment from Lorraine.
Great.
No questions, but a comment. I completely agree with your conclusions about measurement. If you want staff to be honest in their responses to the questionnaire, they need reassurance that this is being used to support them in curriculum enhancement and not as something they will be judged on.
I completely agree with Lorraine, because if we do that, we will completely lose that buy-in, and that came over from the staff consultation. I mean, we consulted right at the beginning, but I think that when they start to see any kind of ratings and any kind of program ranking, we took that out very, very quickly. When it came to actually releasing this to staff for that reason, because what we want it to do is to support them in their development, their design and understanding of employability factors, rather than it being seen as a big stick, because that really will be counterproductive.
Absolutely, it's development rather than anything else.
I would say if there are any thoughts or comments on the sort of the challenge that we have with sort of academic staff looking at sort of methodological quality of data versus what this is trying to do, and sort of understanding of feelings around that, I would be really really grateful to hear that.
And your contact details will be circulated along with the slides.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any more questions? Comments, feedback? I have a burning question, Jill.
Okie doke.
And that is that you mentioned the HEA employability framework at the very beginning, but then focused on the JISC framework. Could I ask you why you found the JISC framework perhaps more useful than the HEA one, or is that just a matter of emphasis?
I think it's a matter of emphasis, because I think the framework was very much the first stage of the framework for the HEA was to gain a shared understanding of employability as step one,
right.
And the second step in the HEA framework is to embed and map the employability within the curriculum, and so this focused on the mapping of the employability in the curriculum, so that we could actually see what we had as a base to start with. So the HEA tool then goes on to to look at the other things that have to happen in order to have that complete embedding. But this particular project was focusing on the mapping of the curricula. So they were very much used hand in hand. The JISC framework was really about that mapping and what an employable student was. And I know there's some tremendous work out there. I know Lorraine's done a lot of work, you know, which I have also used very much. It was the detail within that JISC model that actually was able to sort of list what are these things under each criteria. It was quite easy to pick that up and use it in looking at, so what is in there then. And that's why I chose to use that, and to use something that was something complete rather than a sort of hybrid of a lot of different things.
Thank you. Nice answer. Colleagues, any further questions or comments?
Just a quick one, sorry. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I wondered whether or not any of the analytics that you get about new joiners, about how their skills might tally up to what you are looking for outcomes in the curriculum, whether or not, say, if there is a real lack of a particular skill, whether or not this would inform development of the curriculum in the future.
I think it certainly helps that, doesn't it? Because as we get the information from the students that are coming in, by having this tool, it allows us to look at where the gaps are with the students coming in, and then looking also at how our curriculum is built and what we can then do with it. And I think it just gives us more information to focus on, because I think in the past we've always had a belief that we're very good at it, but this actually gives us a little bit more than just a hunch and a belief. I think, as I've said all the way through, of course it's not perfect, but it gives us more than we had before. And it gives us a little bit of a way to actually focus on some of those things. So yes, I agree. I think there is real potential to do that.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Any more thoughts? In which case, colleagues, can I say thank you very much for coming? Can I say a huge thank you again to Jill? Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. It's great to share with you all.
And it's lovely to see you. And a big thanks to Kath for the organisation. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jill. See you again soon.